Money feels permanent. It feels like it has always existed, like it is simply part of how the world works. But money is not permanent. It is not ancient. And for most of human history, it barely existed at all. Long before paper bills, metal coins, or digital numbers on a screen, humans traded goods directly with each other. Not because they were primitive, not because they hadn't figured it out yet, but because money only becomes useful when something very specific is present: trust. And trust is not automatic. Trust has to be built, slowly, between people who know each other, who live near each other, who depend on each other to survive. In small communities, trust was everywhere. Everybody knew everybody. You traded your grain for my fish because we had lived in the same village for 20 years and I knew you wouldn't cheat me. Money wasn't necessary. The relationship itself was the currency.
But then something changed. Civilizations grew, cities expanded, strangers appeared, and suddenly humans faced a problem no small village had ever encountered before. How do you trade with someone you have never met, will never see again, and have absolutely no reason to trust? This is the problem that created money.
Around 5,000 years ago, the first known money systems appeared in ancient Mesopotamia. Not coins, not paper, clay tablets. Merchants recorded debts on small clay tokens. A farmer might receive a clay record showing that someone owed him a specific amount of grain. That clay tablet had no value itself. It was dried mud, but it represented a promise. And as long as the civilization around it remained stable, that promise meant something. Think about how strange that is. A piece of dried mud controlling how food moved between people across an entire civilization. But it worked. And it worked because the civilization itself was the guarantor. The city-state, the temple, the shared institution behind the clay tablet made it real. The moment that institution collapsed, the clay became worthless immediately. And collapse happened constantly. This is the part about money that most people never think about. Money is not valuable because it is rare. Gold is rare. Diamonds are rare. Neither automatically becomes money. Money becomes valuable because enough people inside a specific system simultaneously agree to act as if it is valuable. That agreement is entirely psychological, and psychological agreements can shatter overnight.
History's full of examples. When the Roman Empire began to collapse in its final centuries, Roman coins slowly lost meaning at the edges of the empire. Merchants in distant provinces began refusing them, not because the coins weighed less, not because they looked different, but because the authority behind those coins was visibly weakening. Trust in Rome was dying, and as trust died, the currency died with it. The same pattern repeated across history. Revolutionary France introduced paper currency backed by seized land in the 1790s. Within years, inflation made that paper so worthless that some people used it as wallpaper because it was cheaper than actual wallpaper. The German mark in the early 1920s collapsed so completely that photographs showed people carrying it in wheelbarrows to buy a single loaf of bread. Zimbabwe printed $100 trillion notes in 2008 that couldn't purchase basic food. In every case, the money itself hadn't changed. The trust had.
And when trust collapses entirely, something fascinating happens. Humans don't stop trading. They never stop trading. They simply find something else to use as money, something with perceived value that exists outside the broken system, something everyone can agree on even when they agree on nothing else. In prisoner of war camps during World War II, cigarettes became the currency. Even prisoners who didn't smoke accepted cigarettes as payment because everyone understood their value inside the camp. Prices developed. Cigarettes became a unit of account. People saved them, traded them, borrowed them. A fully functional cigarette economy emerged entirely spontaneously inside barbed wire fences, created by people who had no power, no banks, and no government backing anything.
The same thing happened in post-war Germany between 1945 and 1948, when the official currency became so distrusted that ordinary Germans switched to trading in cigarettes, coffee, and chocolate. Not because these things were particularly useful, but because they were scarce, portable, and universally desired. They carried enough shared agreement to function as money in a world where the official money had stopped working. In federal prisons in America, for decades, canned mackerel became informal currency among inmates because actual money was prohibited. Mackerel had a stable value. Everybody knew the price. Guards reportedly looked the other way because the system created order. Prison mackerel economics, completely real, completely functional.
What all these examples reveal is something deeply uncomfortable about money. Money has no value in isolation. A $100 bill in the middle of an empty desert is just decorated cotton paper. It cannot feed you, it cannot shelter you, it cannot keep you warm. Its power exists entirely inside a shared human agreement, and that agreement requires working social infrastructure around it. Courts that enforce contracts, governments that maintain stability, communities that believe tomorrow will resemble today. The moment those things disappear, the hierarchy reverses immediately. Suddenly, practical objects dominate: food, water, fuel, medicine, tools, seeds. The things that were always actually valuable reassert themselves the instant the psychological layer protecting paper and coins dissolves away. This is why every civilization that ever collapsed left behind the same pattern in the archaeological record. The fancy currency disappears from trade first, then precious metals appear only rarely, then simple barter goods dominate the layers. Then, if collapse was severe enough, the record goes quiet entirely, because people were surviving, not trading, and survival does not leave much evidence.
But here is what is strange. Once stability returns, money reappears almost instantly, every time. Humans rebuild monetary systems with remarkable speed because the alternative, carrying physical goods every time you want to trade something, is exhausting and inefficient. Money is extraordinarily useful. The problem is never money itself. The problem is what money requires to function. And what money requires is invisible. It requires millions of people to simultaneously keep believing in something that has no inherent value whatsoever. Today, that invisible foundation is more complicated than ever. Modern currencies are backed by nothing physical. No gold, no silver, no warehouses of grain. They are backed entirely by confidence in governments and central banks. The numbers in your bank account are not stored as physical objects anywhere. They are digital entries in systems that exist because enough humans agree they exist. Which sounds either terrifying or completely normal, depending on how long you've thought about it.
The fascinating part is that this system, fragile as it sounds, has worked extraordinarily well for a very long time, because trust, when it is maintained carefully across large institutions, turns out to be one of the most powerful technologies humans ever invented. More powerful than any physical object, more durable than most empires. But trust is not permanent. It never has been. Every monetary system that ever existed has eventually ended, sometimes slowly, sometimes overnight. Sometimes people saw it coming for decades. Sometimes they didn't notice until the wheelbarrow was already packed with useless bills.
And somewhere right now, in whatever corner of the world where stability has recently broken down, someone is accepting cigarettes, or canned fish, or small bags of salt, or mobile phone minutes in exchange for something they need. Because when the agreement fails, humans don't stop trading. They just find a new thing to agree on. And whatever that new thing is, in that moment, in that place, among those people, that is money. Nothing more, nothing less. Just an agreement that holds, for now, between people who need each other. That's all it ever was.